And I will also go to the colonial method and post-theology in Indonesia and the colonial mission of epistemology in the context of Indonesia. So this is Indonesia. For those who are not really familiar with Indonesia, this is Indonesia. It is a quite big country, and it spans from Malay area in Medan to Pacific area in West Papua. So my presentation consider Indonesia not to be a single political identity or take it from political context. Rather, it's a place of multiplicity. It is Asian in Medan side, but it is also Pacific in Papuan, West Papuan side. So this is very complex area with plethoras of knowledge, cultures, folklores, and many more. So for many years, this is my context actually, that we were colonized by Dutch, also Portuguese, British also. And on the other side, you see the Holland Tunnel in New York. This is the result of the treaty of British and Dutch during colonial time exchange an island in Moluccas because it is the source of nutmeg with the lower Manhattan. So lower Manhattan used to be the New Amsterdam in American soil, but it's changed with Rhode Island in Moluccas. And spices and nutmeg it is brought Christianity to Indonesia, and it also Christianity with the introduction of Christianity, and then Dutch, British, and others, especially Dutch and Portuguese, come and introduce Christianity to Indonesia. So why we need the orality? It is because of the knowledge in many countries in global south, including Indonesia. It is stored in storytellings and other folklore means. My conversation with Nene Lattu Grandma Lattu in remote area in Indonesia is equal actually with my conversation with Professor Noam Chomsky in MIT Kendall, USA. They are both the source of knowledge. And this is how we acquire logos, knowledge, including knowledge in theology and mission, that it is equal, both are equal, from grandma in the remote area or from Professor Noam Chomsky in MIT Kendall, USA. So this is the saying from my community, my Southwestern Pacific Melanesian wisdom, Napelua mihanay inakaiti. Do not forget your ancestor teaching. It goes along very nicely with some Chinese teaching as well. When I was in Taiwan a couple months ago, I visited Confucius Teaching Center, where I encountered writing on the sanctuary wall, obey or follow your ancestor. Ancestor for us, ancestor teaching is central for our life in the global south, Indonesia, China, and many more. If we do not follow the teachings, we might suffer social, biological, ecologically, and spiritual devastation. So in the right side, I embody the teaching of my late friend, Louis, a scholar of physics who moved to America as a way of disobedience against the Chinese government oppression of the Taiwanese. Louis told everybody who come to his shop in Peabody Terrace, Harvard graduate student housing, about the wisdom of bamboo. The taller the bamboo, the lower it will bend. The teaching of respecting others that comes from ancestral wisdom serve as a social modality to engage with others. And respect for ancestor, follow the ancestor path, is actually very much biblical in Hebrew Bible and also in the New Testament. We can find it in the Ten Commandments. We can also find it in the encounter between Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. Obeying and following ancestor path is also rooted in our Hebraica Christiano canon. The Ten Commandments mention obeying your parents or ancestor. The Hebrew Bible narrative is the episteme of Israel's ancestor, their encounter with God and others. In our canon, in New Testament, in the last day of Jesus as a human being, in the middle of personal spiritual crisis, in the confusion before the crucifixion, Jesus met Moses and Elijah, two of Jesus' human ancestors. So ancestor path knowledge are central, actually, in the Christian teaching. So this is the posture of Indonesia, Christian presence in Indonesia. It was actually introduced by an historian, but without any any material culture. Some found small material culture on that as evidence, but many of them is Abu Salih al-Armeni writing, Abu Jabari al-Tabari, al-Sabusi, they wrote on that. But the spice trade, bring religion, politics, and economy and colonialism to the area. Encounter with Islam in Indonesia is also another way, like it is a push-pull mechanism. In many areas, it can create peace, but also create conflict. So Muslim in Indonesia, more or less, my Muslim friends here and former student can criticize me or give me the right data, but it's like 86.93 of 75 million. And Christianity, both Protestant and Catholic, made up only like 10.50%, and Hindus, Buddhists, and other local religion. But Christianity already like 22 million of the society. In recent years, we have many Christian churches suffer the freedom of religious ritual in predominantly Muslim province, but this is the same case. While Muslim also suffer the freedom of religious expression in many Christian majority predominantly area. So both suffering because of the encounter. So my question is actually this for today. How to reconstruct the concept of mission in the post-colonial context through a decolonial inkless approach to reclaim the mutual engagement between Christianity and other religions in the second world biggest Muslim majority country. It used to be the number one, but just recently I found in some other sources that Pakistan come first and Indonesia come second. I will use decolonial methods by Tuhiya Smith. Decolonizing methodology are about forcing us to confront the Western academic canon in its entirety. It is philosophy, pedagogy, ethics, organization practice, paradigms, methodology, and discourse that importantly in self-generating arrogance. It is origins, methodology, and the stories that it tells to reinforce its hegemony. Decolonizing methodology is an invitation to stimulate to work that is possible for research when we as researchers decolonize our mind, our discourses, our understanding, our practices, and our institution. So in my research, I found it in theology and also in mission studies that sometimes when we talk about theology, we try to use like positivist mind, look at theology from the global north and try to prove it in the global south. So it is very much North American, Western European centrism. And for me, as for others, it is colonial knowledge actually. And the second, it is inkless, ink prison. It is imperialism of ink, because as if knowledge only preserved in the storage of ink, while in many society in global south, especially Indonesia, we storage our knowledge not only in ink, but also in storytellings, in symbols, and other means or social activism. So it marginalized very much our episteme and orality because of the ink prison. Also in Indonesia, concept of mission and theology, sometimes we have footnote mentalities, just like copying. In Indonesia, we call it beo, is from a bird that try to copying other voice. So we are only copying only, without thinking, reflecting, go deeper to what we have in the context of Indonesia. So actually, these critics invite scholars, theologians, sociologists of religions, also to rethink our theology missions and religious studies in the context of global South. So imperialism of ink in Christian and Christian mission, orality-based memory texts or mnemotext, function as repositories for communities with a strong oral tradition to safeguard their knowledge. You can see in Goody, Walter de Jong, Penkat Rao, and me myself, I also published my book on that. These oral forms can illuminate the challenge faced by Christianity within the specific historical and cultural context, oral-oriented context. So decolonizing method in theology, including mission also, like I borrow from Kokpui Lan, decolonizing knowledge require overcoming Eurocentrism in our understanding, interpretation of local history and folklore, including our history of theology, history of Christianity. So I learn and I try to bring the interdisciplinarity, bringing theology, philosophy, cultural studies, sociology of religion together in this presentation. So this is actually my invitation to re-existence, to recentering the orality, recentering our episteme and a way of engagement in mission studies. Using philosophical, cultural, sociological of religion, assert that texts encompass more than just written document. Life, reality also constitute vital texts for comprehension, including mission and theology. Symbol, for instance, hold significance for those who attribute values to them. And religious symbols in particular carry sacramental things, sacramental meanings that are understood as a sacred by their believers, adherents, and people in the area. So therefore, the texts extend beyond only writing to encompass message rather than only in the ink and prison of ink. So here the colonial method has attempt to recenter indigenous episteme, indigenous knowledge, our orality, our story, including her story within the context of mission and Christian theology. So this approach embraces local episteme, mnemotext, text in our mind, orality, and many social elements tradition in Indonesia Christian mission. So this is from my book, focus more on interreligious dialogue, but criticize interreligious dialogue. So the title is Rethinking Interreligious Dialogue, because I would like to incorporate more orality, collective memory, and engagement rather than dialogue. So this is conversation in quote unquote. So it is not only conversation that we come to the formal table using ink-based canon and talk, but sometimes for people in the global south, including Indonesia, table is not in front of us, but table in our mind. Book is not something that we read. It is the text, it is the discourse, it is the meaning that we hold in our heart. So, so decoloniality and everyday knowledge, collective memory, cultural context, text is really important in the study of mission theology, including interreligious engagement that I also mentioned here as a form of mission, not to convert, but to engage with others. So the coloniality invites subaltern voice using SPIFAC from the social margin that have been muted for decades. Space for mutual encounters in everybodyness and plethoraness. So means everybody can do that, and we have plethora of means, creative means to engage with others and to create space of peace as a form of mission. So I try to use Peter Pan and one work from Philip Wickery. Philip Wickery is a former professor of the GTU, but now working in China. And Peter Pan is a former refugee from Vietnam, now working in Georgetown University. And Peter Pan say that mission is a complex and multiple witness, proclaim, catechesis, worship, and enculturation, interreligious dialogue, liberation, to name only most obvious activities that church perform. So interreligious dialogue here is a mission to create peace, mission to create good relationship with others. Again, it is not mission to convert, but mission to engage. A new hermeneutic of mission that allow us to move back and forward between scripture and contemporary context, but I will add more. It's not only context, but also text, our contemporary local indigenous text, in a responsible and transforming interaction between Christianity and the world, including people from other religion. So here, a voice of the church, vox ecclesiam, in many cases, sometimes reduces the voice of knowledge, of community, vox populi. So vox ecclesiam in many cases reduce vox populi. People are born with DNA of conversion, not conversation, sorry. Born with DNA of conversation or engagement, but the doctrine in the name of God separates people from their cultural path, mutual understanding with their religious fellow seeker. So for me, in one of my writing, edited by Professor Kokpuilan, I say that mission in Indonesia, or political theology, or mission in Indonesia, like from Roma to Jakarta, from the concept of city of Satan to city of God. St. Augustine put it as a perfect order or harmonious enjoyment of God and one another in God. So the concept of Roma to Jakarta means we bring city of God, we bring peace, we bring order and harmonious relationship with others, peace to others. And here we can find it in cultural turn using our culture, our quotidian relationship, in everyday relationship, and also in our Indonesian political trust. I will explain about that. So for me, this is the main Christian mission in Indonesia. Develop Christian political theology from the national text and cultural text, orality and remembrance, to foster critical Christian engagement in Indonesia. It is not only Christian presence, but engage with others. So this is the mission, the first mission of Christianity in Indonesia. The second one is strengthen equal civil rights in political texts. We have state ideology or Pancasila, and we have Constitution or Undang-Undang Dasar 1945, UUD 1945, that put everybody in the equal position, ensure the rights for religious freedom. Yes, we have many groups that working through their fundamentalism's logic. They also challenge this concept of national political tax, and also sometimes we also recognize public policy that sometimes also hamper the equal rights as well. The third one is promote civic and interreligious engagement in multi-social spheres. This is really important. Promote civic and interreligious engagement in multi-social spheres. So for me, this is Christian mission in Indonesia. So Christian mission in Indonesia is, again, is not to convert, but to invite Indonesian Christian to strengthen political theology, to foster critical engagement with others, together with others to develop Indonesia as a country, to strengthen equal rights and political texts, to promote civic and interreligious engagement in multi-social spheres. Okay, so for me, we have modality in Indonesia. We have modality in Indonesia for forming interreligious engagement as a conversation, quote unquote. Again, it is not formal conversation, but the way we engage with others. We have multiple tags. We have sui generis quoting Durkheim. We have our own way to engage with others. I will show it later on. We have plethora of toolkits, richness of toolkits. We have alternative methods from cultural everyday relationship, digital means to political stage. We can also embrace the subaltern voice. We give room for mnemo-culture, so everybody can also involve. It's not only, when we call about mission, we talk about interreligious engagement, it's not only the business of elite, including academic elite or religious elite, but it is the business of everybody in the context of Indonesia. So this is the reality in my family. I'm back there by my wife and also my kids. So we have interreligious family. That my father-in-law, for the first time before I approached my wife, he asked for my writing and tried to prove if I am somebody who have inclusive mind and can be part of this family. Unless if I have fundamentalist mind, exclusive mind, I won't be part of this family. We have also our national confessional covenantal pluralism as a political text for interreligious engagement as a mission. In our national text, since the first time our founders established Indonesia, they already think about equality. They think about how we engage in a peaceful way as an Indonesia. So since the beginning, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and other religion already in equal position. So that's why I am emphasis on the mission of Christianity to strengthen this position, because it's already peaceful. It is already good news for others. During colonial time in Surabaya, as it is also in South Africa, because we both colonized by the Netherlands, there was a sentence on the wall: white and their dog can come into a cafe, while inlanders or indigenous cannot. So in their position, we can see Dutch, their dog, and indigenous community. But now in Indonesia, we have our equal position. My former professor, Professor John Titalay, also mentioned about that from Indonesia. He's from Indonesia. He's also mentioned about this, that this is actually our mission in the context of Indonesia. In countrysides, taking, this is for my article published in International Journal of Asian Christianity, for wayang puppet. And on the picture, you can see this is the way Christian Indonesia celebrate Easter. You can imagine Easter like this. It is not like, if you only see the picture without understanding the narrative behind it, you won't understand that as a Christmas celebration. But in the Javanese Christian community on the Mermarbu side, specifically in the Ngaduman area, retain their Japanese purification ritual or saparan, but combine it with the Easter celebration in April. They call it Aprilan. Because of its hybridity, Saparan Aprilan creates a social space where it is possible to celebrate social solidarity and collective commemorators among Buddhist, Muslim, Christian on the mountainside, on the countryside of Indonesia. This is another important material culture, materiality in Indonesia. Romani Pillar, a pillar from Muslim cultural sibling community into Haha Christian Church, mark a shared religious reign as an interreligious cultural engagement. Before the inauguration of this Christian church, the Muslim imam from cultural sibling community conducted an Islamic inauguration ritual for this particular pillar within the Christian church. People live this narrative for thousands of years. The mission of Christianity here is to preserve the collective memory and strengthen the sense of belonging, interreligious belonging, creating peace. This is already good news for this community. So this is actually Christian mission to strengthen this one. Religious pluralism and creative interreligious engagement as a Christian mission also. Semantic text in dance, in body, mutual respect, celebrate life with religious sibling. On the left side, Christian and Muslim, they march together, they dance, they during the 7th Shawwal in Islamic tradition. We're bringing together Christian and Muslim to celebrate that. On the right side, you see the Christian trumpet from the Christian church also participate in 7th Shawwal, creating phonetic sphere for social solidarity beyond church building. So this is actually already part of Christian mission. I put it this one interestingly as football. So this is not only interreligious dialogue, but how football become interreligious dialogue in Indonesia. So it's become national ritual stage for performing interreligious engagement. So through creative means like football as the biggest sport in Indonesia, and circulated by social media, including YouTube and many more, the football field served as national pulpit to preach the good news of mutual understanding and interreligious engagement. See Hindus doing prayer like this when they score, Christian doing prayer like this, and Muslim doing sujud. This activism is a form of conversation to create a sense of nationality and unity among people from different religious background. It circulates the narrative of peace to contest hatred and religious violence that is publicly also performed by fundamentalist group within each religious groups in Indonesia. So this is part, for me, part of Christian mission in Indonesia. So in conclusion, orality in the colonial mission invites subalterns, texts, people, voices, and episteme into the discourse of theologizing and creative mutual encounter between Christianity and other religions in Asia Pacific, Indonesia, as part of Christian mission. Our text, our modernity, our social modality for church mission to converse, not to convert, but to converse and create the city of God for all God people in Indonesia and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Lattu. You have a lot of very interesting ideas there. And before I throw it open to anybody online and also here in Oxford, I'd just like to reflect a little on my own experience in working with African indigenous churches that broke from the mission churches during the colonial period, because for two reasons. Either they sought a deeper experience of the Holy Spirit, or they rejected the colonial missionary ethos, which of course included political control. In fact, those two things often came together. And these churches that broke away were often from the poorer members of society, those that were less well educated, and many indeed had little, if any, formal education. And in some ways, they have continued like that until fairly recently. So that the theology of these churches is embedded, is not written out in any doctrinal form. It's not in ink. It's not in the imprisoned in ink, as it were. It is oral. It is expressed in ritual, in dance, in religious symbolism, in the telling of oral narratives about their foundation, and in a whole variety of different ways to express who they are. And when these churches come into contact with the mainstream Western-founded churches, which, as you've pointed out, are very firmly based in scripts, in printed scripts, even indeed in theologies that are recorded in books, and assume that unless you have a whole library of theological texts written and printed, then you don't know theology. These indigenous churches have got marginalized, or for a long time were marginalized. So I have spent most of my life in working with these churches. And more recently, we have found that what we were doing was working with them to enable them to articulate a theology that could be heard and understood by the mainstream churches. And in our thinking, that meant in some way to record that faith and that theology in print. However, when we came to conduct our workshops of these churches, in which we would call together not just the church leaders, but ordinary people, women, the younger generation, the elders as well, and we would simply listen to each other talking about their faith. And then we had to write something from that. We had to create what would be a printed text from that. We got into difficulties because we couldn't create a systematic theology. What we could print was a description of the rites, of the ceremonies that these churches carried out with the biblical texts that they referred to, and also the songs they sang and the oral narratives that they told us about their church's foundation, which contained a very great deal of new, fresh religious thinking in their foundations. So we were, that is about as far as we've got. And the purpose of putting just a description of those things in print was that so that the young people of these indigenous churches could turn to the mainstream churches and present them with some kind of printed text and say, look, this is where we are. These are our texts. Even if it is a printed text of an oral memory, but this is where we are. Would you say, from your experience, that we are not so much decolonizing, but we have been recolonizing? I hope not, but anyway, it could be that we have actually been recolonizing a community that was oral and shared by everybody. It wasn't just the leaders who owned the faith, it was everybody in the community. Do you have any comments on that? How that compares with your experience?
Thank you. I think this is really important comment and also experience. I'll start with another experience of how I saw an elder in the church reading a Bible upside down, but he read that but upside down. And after he finished that, we just found out that he cannot read. He just memorized. But he pretend to read because Christianity for him, again, it's like my grandfather, is a religion of literacy, and our ecclesia is also like ink-based ecclesia. So he pretend to read. He pretend to read, but it's actually memorized. So I would like to say that like in one of the song that I actually start the whole project is, the song say that the story of ink, this is the local song after Christian-Muslim conflict in eastern part of Indonesia, and they found out that Christianity and Islam cannot solve this problem. Government can also cease the fire, but can't bring the society together. It is culture that brings society together. And they write a song like this: the history of ink cannot tell the entire story. It is the folk song that narrate people, heart and mind. So in this context, they put it in many songs. So theology is not in the canon. It can be in song. It can be also in pillars, like in the Christian church. It can be other materiality as well. Yes, literacy is there. It is good. But my project is actually to say that this is not the source of knowledge. We have also other sources of knowledge and theology. And we would like to use that for our mission to create peace with others. Then we could see the creativity. We could also dive to our indigenous knowledge way of engaging with others as well as a means of conversation, quote unquote, with others. So I hope that this is can address your question. Yeah. So, yeah, this is very much what I can probably say about that. Or using sociology of religion's understanding, like we live in tacit knowledge, while Christianity in scientific knowledge, because it's in the logic of ink and so on and so forth. So sometimes when we develop systematic theology, we see only the scientific knowledge without consider the tacit knowledge as one of the source. We tend to also see vita contemplativa way of theology without also realizing that we have vita activa, like Aren say, like my former professor, Michael D. Jackson also mentioned about that. Like, yes, I.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'd like to throw open the opportunity to everybody else. If you are online, please raise your hand in the usual way. And
Here.
Physically, for those of you who are here. I think we'll begin with two people online. David, first of all, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this excellent lecture. I was listening to every word you used in your presentation, and it was fantastic, I have to say. I'm feeling encouraged now to read more of what you've written. Obviously, it's very good to know that you are also publishing in Izak, the Asian Journal of Christianity.
Right.
So that's fantastic. I have to confess, some years ago, I really didn't think much of orality and memory that goes with it. This whole idea that somehow one can use memory as a way of generating primary sources, sources that can be relied upon, was not something I thought much of. Largely because I understood that memory can be fallible. It can often be misrepresented, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously.
Right.
And one can exaggerate in remembering the past, and there is a fair degree of subjectivity involved in remembering. But I changed my mind to a large extent after I read M.N. Srinivasan's great work, The Remembered Village. You know the story of how that came into being, and so I don't need to recount it and bore you with details. It was an excellent departure from the established way of doing anthropology, and although it is still critiqued by anthropologists, he has in fact established a tradition that many scholars around the world are following. But I also understand that memory and orality do not really exist on their own. And the reason why one can rely upon this particular way of generating sources is because memory often is concretized through establishing traditions and histories that are shared by other people around you and me. And the fact that what is remembered is also performed in rituals. And I think that that's an important thing to remember. But my question really is about Indonesia. You talked about modernity, and it helped me to remind myself of the idea of multiple modernity, that the idea that Western notion of modernity is not the one that everyone around the world is following. We have our own modernities, and Indonesia obviously has its own brand of modernity that supports the notions of democracy and plurality and so on. But you did not mention in your presentation somebody very well known in this field from Indonesia, and his name is Nurcholish Majid. And I'm just wondering if you could say something about his role in promoting democracy and the idea of pluralism. But also if you could comment a little bit about the counterbalancing forces which are undermining plurality and democracy in a place like Indonesia.
Thank you, David, for your question and also your insights. I'll answer that, but I'll invite my friend Muhammad Abdillah from Muhammadiyah organization, Islamic, one of the biggest Islamic organization in Indonesia. Abdillah just finished his dissertation from Harvard International University on also on Nurcholish Majid. But he is actually one of our founders in systematic way of understanding religious pluralism, at least in the conceptual framework. He's very much our hero in Indonesia because he criticized the doctrine, including in his own religion, that hamper people from coming together, creating mutual understanding. So now many Muslim scholars, especially in Muhammadiyah way, they call it the progressive Muslim or Islam berkemajuan. They very much work on that and try to reclaiming his idea and legacy into Indonesian framework of religious pluralism. And what put our religious pluralism in jeopardy is actually because of the politics of identity as well, and also the use of religion for the political power. It is not only for people who really strongly believe in religious doctrine, but for the political activist elites that want to gather votes using religious issues. They're using very pragmatic way of stepping into the top of political stage in Indonesia, but unfortunately they use these religious sentiments and create problem among society. And I will also say that our national covenantal pluralism is not finished yet. In some sense, it's good on the paper, but in reality, I have to also recognize some cracks here and there that we have to fix as a Muslim and Christian. That's why I invite many of my friends pro-Muslim and other Buddhists also to come to this discussion. So this is actually an invitation for us to be critical and also see some lacuna actually in the practice of religious pluralism in Indonesia. Try to bridge that and try to uncover that, unpacking that, and see that we still hope. We have hope, but we have to also aware of some of downside, especially in political arena. Yeah. Thank you, David. And I'll invite Mas Abdillah probably say something about Nurcholish Majid because it's part of your dissertation. Please, Mas.
Okay. Thank you, Bang Izak, for the invite. So yeah, my encounter with Nurholis Majid, or we call in Indonesia Cak Nur, is, well, I met him once actually, and we graduated from the same pesantren. Pesantren is like madrasah, boarding Islamic school in remote area in East Java. About the memory, the pesantren always, and at the time, the pesantren always referred to Cak Nur or Nurholis Majid for being moderate Muslims who, become the driver for the Islamic reforms in Indonesia and Islamic modernism in Indonesia, and also the ones who the driving factor in spreading religious tolerance. So that kind of, we as a student at the time, like doctrinize, like be Cak Nur, be if you, like, he's the very good example of being a Muslim, being of alumni of this pesantren, like, so that's, and then yeah, that kind of memory, and that kind of memory brought me to the way I myself and some of my friends chose the studies that we that we are choosing for, during the, let's say, the bachelor degree and then master and and also the field that we are taking. So yeah, that's kind of the how the stories about Cak Nur in the pesantren at that time embedded in our minds. So that's we, become the way we are now. I mean, although I met him only once during my life, before I met him maybe a few months before he died in 2004. So yeah, that's the related to Professor Izak Lattu's lecture today about the memory is how this memory, how this story repeated every time our teachers saying about good alumni of the pesantren and how to be a good Muslims. Nurholis Majid names is always coming up in the conversations. So that's the way we try to follow his path to be moderate Muslims. So yeah, that's the one of the what is called related one thing about memory about Cak Nur that related to this lecture. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for, yes.
Thank you so much, Muslim.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else at the moment online who would like to ask a question or make a comment? If not, we'll turn to people here at Oxford. Anybody else? Not yet.
There's one.
Oh yes, please.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for your amazing presentation. And I was impressed by your kind of idea of mission as conversation rather than conversion. But in Indonesia, do most churches really follow this approach, or many still see conversion as the main goal of mission? Because in Korea, where I'm from, is something, there are more kind of most of churches, they are following the conversion still. So I'm just curious about your context. Thank you.
Okay. Kamsahamnida, Moksanyim. Thank you so much, Pastor Kim, for that. Yes, I agree with you. Like 3 months ago, I presented my presentation on the politics of interreligious relation in Indonesia and how it is tied up with theology in Hankook University for Foreign Studies. And people from many School of Theology in Korea come. And the idea like this is actually not really familiar for many churches in Korea. But this is how we in Indonesia, Indonesian Christian, we believe that this is how we live our good news. The good news is become good Indonesian Muslim, become good Indonesian Christian, become good Indonesian Buddhist, Hindus, indigenous religion, and so on and so on and so forth that can engage with others. So I will say that although we have fundamentalist groups in Indonesia, but majority of churches under the Council of Churches in Indonesia or PGI are very much in the same way, this line. Even within the Calvinist church that brought by Dutch missionary to Indonesia, it is not longer Calvinist in that sense. Like we have new Calvinists from Grand Rapids now having their own school. They plan their mission as well in Indonesia. That they can be located in probably evangelical groups. But for the Calvinists that rooted very much in ethnic groups like Malukas Protestant Church, Minasan Protestant Church, Timor Protestant Church, and many more, even the Batakers Lutheran Church for the Lutheran, we now very much embracing cultural tax and political tax and the tax of quotidian relationship. Because, our Pancasila is actually strong because we believe that only because of this national ideology we can be one. Because this nation is actually divided by water, but united by Pancasila. So this is very big, but it is mostly water. Without the Pancasila ideology, the ideology that bring everybody together in equal position, at least on the paper, like when I addressed to David inside. So this is actually the main mission of predominantly Christian church, Protestant and Catholic in Indonesia. Because we believe that this is actually our mission. Without this, Indonesia will experience balkanization probably. So to avoid that, mission is to bring the good news. Good news is if everybody is in equal position. So we believe that we are already in equal position in Indonesia. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Who wanted to was it?
Yeah.
Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Prof. Lattu, so much for this very engaging
Welcome.
your presence here with us. First of all, I want to begin with a short reflection, like David and and John, but from within the context where I am. What I've seen, I think, moving in different churches, perhaps you move from South Africa, from Zambia, from Korea, and from here, is our pastor here in the UK has been so gracious to Mtari and I, so he told us to start leading a small group on Mondays, which we started doing graciously because we've been wanting to be a little bit more involved in the church. So we started looking at the book of Luke. We started looking at the book of John. And one of these evenings, this thing of taking it for granted that you are in the UK, so everybody is at the same table, on the same page with you. I distributed all the text for people to read. And then one person refused to read. And I was worried that I was doing something wrong at that time. And then after the Bible study, this person came to me and said, I can't read. I can't read. So I'm trying to reflect on your story here. To what extent that sometimes us from the global south, we tend to think that there is this clear divide between us and them. And when in actual sense, the people that we think them may as well functioning in some ways with orality as well. Because this person told me that I listen to the Bible when I'm driving, somebody reading it for me. This is a white person who probably have to engage exactly from a horror perspective for you to do that. So this Zizek's framework, which you've combined with the colonial understanding of things, the drinking and the stuff, to what extent that the parallax view, sometimes we take that and then we obstruct ourselves from seeing the other side that the so-called the other has already seen. I would like you to comment on that, because in the parallax view, you can see one thing, but then the other person probably has seen what you have not seen. That's one. But then the very idea of the ink and that you are bringing, I find that very, very fascinating. That you theorize the concept in such a beautiful way, the ink theory that you are bringing here. To what extent can we also say that to the extent we desire to de-ink our imaginations, we are actually inking them. We move, like what you've done today. You are fundamentally de-inked, but at the same time, your process was fundamentally incline, whatever you can call it. You put it very inkling, but it's inkling in some ways. So would you say that this inkling process, it has already downplayed your own ideas because it's now inked?
Yes.
I'm leaving it there because
Great, great, come on. Thank you. I realized that when I wrote the introduction of my book, and so that's why in the book I try to also develop the concept of tertiary orality. And I'll come back to yours, but I will explain about this. So the first orality is how we talk in our everyday basis. And the second orality for Walter Geong and others come when we have radio and TV. But now we have tertiary orality. It's not only that you can hear the sound or see somebody talk, but you can talk back, and you can put it for longer on YouTube and other means. So you can create also the tertiary orality. So that's now we have many story, we have many children's story now in the tertiary orality. Now, I very much realize the inkless ink relationship in the study like this, including in theology. But my message is actually to help all of us think that our theology, our religious studies, our knowledge, it is not only in the form of ink, but please remember, realize that other people, they also remember. So this is actually, that's why when I put Grandma Lattu Consina from the countryside of Malukas in the equal position with Noam Chomsky, I try to say that this is actually equal source of knowledge. Whether we can acquire knowledge logos from Chomsky or Grandma Lattu Consina, it's actually both are equal. So the presence of literacy is actually to strengthen orality. It is not to diminish the orality, but it is actually to strengthen that. And the way we write, we try to explore more from the context of global South and your story in the global North. Also, I also realized that, like in some part of Germany, they also still struggle with that in Serbia, Bosnia, other stuff. But I would like to also remind us that we have other knowledge. We have not only scientific knowledge in our academia or in our academic pulpit, but we also have tacit knowledge. We have experience in our everyday life. So my invitation is actually to see these two, the tacit knowledge, tacit theology, and scientific theology, as equal theology or equal, and when we use it for mission, it is in the equal position. Because in many parts of the world, people still have their reflection, their connection with God through the means of remembrance and memory, not only in orality. So that's thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Actually, I
For your
wanted you.
question. I know this is hard question.
No,
When I
no, actually, actually, I wanted you to get to that level.
yeah
The very idea of orality in the world, sometimes it's downplayed because oftentimes stories that people hold, like John was saying, if those stories they just remain as stories, then it's difficult that other people may not benefit from those ideas. So then I think it's a question of how do we overcome. I was just worried that if you move too much towards the inkless position, then you are creating a new dichotomy in terms of the very struggle that we are trying to disrupt the dichotomies that are easily created, and then they become the ink and the inkless. At the same, rather than seeing these as not in conflict, but in fact two aspects that are informing each other in a different way. That as much as you have brought these voices,
right.
remember that the ink is often reducible, but not so much. Somebody in this context should be John again.
Right.
Say that, for instance, if you read Shakespeare's, there is always this excess. He was quoting Trace, I think, in Dialogic.
David Trace.
David Trace. There's this excess element to it. And I think somebody else says that there is a way that ideas overlive, the idea of overlive in what you are saying. So, but not all the ink tends to overlive, to resurrect. They die, reburied, and are forgotten. But the orality has this dimension of overliving itself and creating new meanings, the horizon that continues constantly, the way the same context story was told at some point, people tend to readapt it to the new context, but the essence of it is there. But they deconstruct it themselves through the very process that they are doing it. But this is where the ink dimension of it also helps us, because the ink can help us trace how this idea is overlived,
Right.
or whether it fundamentally died and never resurrected.
Right.
Thank you. We have one more.
Thank you.
Why me?
Yeah.
I do have some experiences or comments. I agree with you that both orality and ink and inkless are both very important means to our missionary work. For example, in China, I can give you two small examples. My pastor came from a Jesus family tradition. You maybe some of you may know this tradition. So it was a Chinese original Chinese-born denomination, you can call it. In the from 1922 to 1952, many of the members of this church do not read. So they share their stories, they share their dreams, and they sing. They sing small songs.
Yes.
Those songs are still being sung today in the church. So this is the importance, significance of orality. And the other, I think, is the opposite example. One of my fellow students, she's from a minority group of people in China. So these are a total different people from our Han, Chinese, traditional Chinese. They speak different languages. They have their own traditions. They used to have no written systems, but the Western missionaries created a writing language. So they can read the Bible, they sing, they have their own hymn books. They are still using that Bible, and they're still singing the hymns. And it was it's a strange characters. It's like a Roman character played upside down. So it's just strange, but it is still used today. So my point is, I think these two means, these are both significant. But my question to Professor Lattu is that with modernity, I assume there's a better literacy. So do you think when using orality, do you think you are targeting a special market share, the older illiteracy members of the church, and how to put in practice, how to separate them, and how significant it is for the younger generation, I mean, the orality tradition. So how do you put the theory into practice?
Okay. Thank you so much, Shisheni, for your question.
Wow.
I will address that with a joke from a school. So one day, teacher asked everybody in the school, like kids in the school, to draw something scary. So after 5 minutes, everybody come with everybody's paper. And the first one come with Dracula. And the teachers say that, yeah, scary. Okay, Dracula is scary. And then somebody come with very big crocodile. And the teacher said, it's scary. And then the last one come with only sentence, children, just children. So the teacher said that, what the scary part of this? I asked you to draw something scary, but you only write children. And the kids say that, no, that's not the way we read that. You should read that like this, children. And the teacher said, so with this, literacy very much tied up with our logic and mind, while in many part orality touch our heart. So we combine these two into our ecclesiastical discourse, then we will also touch our heart. So that's why in Christianity we produce many songs, and in many churches in Indonesia we also produce many songs using rhythm of local community. Last month I had a conference, annual meeting of Sociology of Religion in Chicago, and I sit down with Afu Adogami from Princeton, and we talk about Christianity in Africa, Brother Kama. And he said that in Nigeria they can go to church and have a service for 6 hours, consecutive hours. And I said, how come? And he said, because they sing a lot. They dance, they use somatic and also poetic, somatic and poetic message in the service. It isn't only something based on the British or Dutch way of conducting Christian service, but this is African. This is Nigerian way of having service. So they can have service for that long because they combine poetic and somatic to conduct the the service. So I will say that actually my invitation is again to bring orality and equal position, like Kama already said. It sometimes they down play or see orality as a less than literacy. But I will say that no, in many ways, people can come to church crying, not only because they read, but because they listen. They listen to the story. They listen to the music. They feel it. They feel with their heart. And it can change them into somebody good. Some of my students, they create hip-hop music, published book, invited as a main speaker for international conference from Indonesia. And it's because only hip-hop that he put it as toleransi. In Indonesia, we have tolerance and we call it toleransi as a tolerance. Instead of using toleransi, he put it as tolerapsi, means how rap music, hip-hop music, through the means of orality, performance, it can also create the bridge for Christian and Muslim to come together. So this is already mission in the sense of orality to create a good news for many people. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you very much. I'd like to make one comment, which is with the rise of social media and the ubiquity of mobile phones, are we not experiencing a return to orality?
Right, you're right. Yeah, so that's why I put it as a tertiary orality, the reclaiming of orality in social media means. So so orality is coming back through social media. Yeah. So now,
thank you very much indeed. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You brought us some very exciting ideas, which we will continue to consider as we continue with this series. And thank you for all of those who have attended online. This time next week, I will be looking briefly at an overview of some theological understandings of conversation, mission as conversation. And then we will hear from the practical experience. She's a practitioner rather than an academic, of a woman in this country who works with people who call themselves not religious, but spiritual. So they reject religion, but they believe that they are looking for the spirit. That's a whole category of people I think in the West in general.
New Age movement.
That's something like that, yes. But of course they would say that's pejorative. Yes, it's something like that. So, and she does this through conversation, through orality, really. So we'll be exploring that next week. You're very welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
And thank you once again, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate
Next
we'll be
week
in
I will
touch.
be in Munster. Talk about this issue in Munster and Bielefeld in Germany. Hope that one day I can cross over to Oxford for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be good to see you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Blessings.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you. Shukran. Shukran. Thank you.
And
Bye.